Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by The Art of Education, and I'm your host, Tim Bogans. With this episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Now, as you know, Andrew and I always like to talk about the big ideas because we want to inspire teachers to think about and reflect on what we do and why we do it as art teachers. Like I said, the big picture. And too often we get away from seeing those things that are happening every day or talking about what's going on in classrooms on a day-to-day basis. And so we decided with this episode, we're going to talk about what happens every day in classrooms. And we're going to talk specifically about projects that are happening in your classroom. So we're calling this one the Project Doctors, because what we did is asked our listeners via email and Facebook to send us questions about projects that they either want to do, projects that they have done, and that maybe aren't working so well, and perhaps we can fix them up. So we're going to talk a little bit about just some different ideas, different things that we can cover dealing with printmaking and drawing and painting and sculpture and even classroom management. We're going to dive into all of that today. And as much as Andrew and I love to think that we know everything, we don't. So we decided to bring on an extra guest tonight, and that is going to be Alecia Kaczmarek. And you may know her as Alecia Eggers. She wrote for The Art of Ed for a long time. She's an awesome elementary teacher who's great with instructional strategies, with classroom management, with routines, just teaching in general. So because of that, we feel like we have all our bases covered with my high school experience, Andrew's working in the middle school for so long, and then Alecia at the elementary level, that hopefully we can dive in and answer questions that apply to just about every level. So they are here right now. We are ready to go. So let's put together the Project Doctors here and talk about a few different ideas and maybe some things that can help you in the classroom. So we'll dive in right now. All right, and we are here with two guests tonight, ready to dive into the mailbag. And first off, everyone knows Andrew. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Tim. Thanks for having me on today.
All right. And secondly, we have the former Alecia Eggers, who just got married. And Alecia, I'm going to have you pronounce your last name for us, if you would, so just so I don't mess it up.
Sure. It is now Alecia Kaczmarek. So it's kind of a mouthful, but we can just do Kaz for short.
Okay, that sounds really good. And I think we have a good combination here because I have all of my high school experience. Andrew does middle school, Alecia does elementary, and I think hopefully between the three of us we can get some good answers to all of these questions here. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off. Our first question, and this actually isn't necessarily a question, but I think it's worth a little bit of discussion. But this comes from Dawn, who is one of our listeners in Minnesota, and she said this: I once had students paper mache balloons only to arrive in the morning with half of them deflated with sides sunk in. I've since found that helium balloons are more reliable. They're more expensive, but worth it. And while it's not as durable as flour paste, I like Elmer's art paste as it cleans up more easily and doesn't smell after storage at room temperature, which we know is always an issue. So I'll throw that out there to you guys. Alecia, you first. Have you ever had an experience like this with paper mache?
Yes. And I would say my first experience was pretty successful. We did a, newspaper wrapped with masking tape, and then did paper mache on top with, newspaper strips and then the art paste as well. But I did have a major Pinterest fail last year I tried, just normal blown up everyday party balloons. And I don't know if we didn't layer them right, but I also had the same issue that we came in and they were completely deflated the next day.
Oh, man, that's bad. And so what do you do at that point?
We kind of talked about, all kinds of art is, you kind of try sometimes, and sometimes you just have to fail forward. And we just kind of moved on from there. We didn't necessarily try again. If I had had more time in the curriculum, we probably would have, but they were okay with it. They seemed deflated themselves. So
Okay. So
We were ready to move on together. Yes.
All right. Okay. Andrew, did you want to brag about your sculpture expertise and or offer some advice here?
Yeah, I have my MFA in sculpture, and my thesis was in paper mache. So I have a
Seriously?
I did a lot of paper mache. I don't know what it was. I liked
That's
this
awesome.
cheap utilitarian feel of it. But one of the things I think that with paper mache, I think it's all about the layers. And I always tell people to have. I always do a minimum of 4 layers, and here's why. Because I start with newspaper, and then I always get the kids to do like their second and third layer that first day. And I alternate layers so that you can see where you've been and not been. So here's what I've done over the years, and I think it's worked really well. First layer, newspaper. Second layer, paper towel strips. Third layer, back to newspaper. And then the fourth layer, back to paper towel strips. And there's another reason I like that, especially if you're painting with elementary kids in tempera. Tempera is pretty wimpy, and you go to paint something and you can see like all the car advertisements and like sports advertisements and all that stuff coming through with the newspaper. If your final layer is paper towel, which is either white or brown, you've already knocked down like all of that text and stuff. So I actually think what probably happened with Dawn was maybe not enough layers. And also, this is like really nerdy, but how you store your balloons, I store them kind of fat bottom down on a like either paper collar or yogurt container. And then I think as it deflates, like gravity will kind of help it hold itself up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I do something really similar, just, oak tag poster board, that color that you're talking about, or just cut a long strip of, like I said, oak tag or poster board, wrap it in a big circle and just set the balloon right inside of there. And that seems to work really well.
I love the idea of the actual layered layers of alternating between newspaper and paper towels. I think that would really help communicate the layer thing to my elementary kiddos as well.
We have a second question from Dawn. She has a question about styrofoam relief printing with elementary kids. And she says, what ink should I use for my styrofoam printing? Nothing works as well as the Speedball black water base that she uses with her secondary kids, but it's too messy and creates, too many stains for elementary. And you can't switch to tempera because that's going to leave just terrible results. So what do you guys recommend for ink when it comes to styrofoam relief printing?
I actually use the Blick block printing ink, and I do use it with my elementary students, even as young as second grade. And I think it kind of comes down to, yes, it can get really messy. And I'm a big supporter of routines. So we really concentrate on the routine of how to ink your foam, how to make yourself stay clean. But also, if you need a cheap alternative to aprons, or, you've gotten rid of your cloth aprons for various health issues, I would say if you have some kiddos who are prone to getting messy, or even if you're really worried about them getting messy, you could just even do trash bags, cut a hole out the bottom and put it over like a poncho for printing day. They might get a kick out of that too. But obviously leave it open at the bottom for some ventilation. But I would just say, you kind of just have to go with what's out there. And it's kind of nice to have the quality actual products that you're going to use that they might use later in later years too, so they can get used to it. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I would agree. Like, I think quality materials are worth it. Like, even if, things are going to stain, even though you're going to make a mess, I feel like you just kind of need to deal with that, because there isn't really that good of an alternative in this situation, because, that Speedball ink is just so good. And if you're using like lesser materials, I feel like you're setting your kids up for a little bit of failure. Like, things are not going to go quite as well. So even if it is a little bit of a mess, I think it's worth it to spend a little bit more and kind of deal with that mess, so you can get some good results with that. But yeah, we'll go ahead and move on to the next question. Andrew, I'm going to direct this one to you, but it comes from Heath, who is a high school teacher in Pennsylvania. He says, I really struggle to connect with my apathetic high school boys, especially the 9th and 10th graders. Can you give me some suggestions of projects that have worked for you? What might motivate them and actually get them excited to be in art class?
I get that too. And sometimes I look around my classes, especially like my ninth grade classes, because I do ninth and 10th or ninth and 8th. Sorry. I'm thinking of Heath's classes. And it's like 17 girls and then 2 boys, or, 18 and 3. And it's just like, what is it about art, and sort of society out there that we think it's sort of like a girls only club? But that's probably a topic for like another podcast. But one thing, there's a couple things I know right off the bat that I think, stereotypically connect with boys who are disinterested. And that is technology and something that's really physical and messy. So that's clay. So if you can get a technology unit, so whether you're using Photoshop or digital photography or 3D modeling, something where it's like, oh, this is technology and this is, STEM and this is science. They sort of like get over the whole, like, I'm too cool for that idea. And then I also think ceramics, because it is messy and it is physical and you really need to kind of like use some upper body strength and some hand strength and manipulating it. And there's sort of that like part of your brain that's like 3-dimensional spatial awareness. That has really helped me kind of work with kids who, 2-dimensional, let's draw this beautifully rendered thing, have been sort of checked out. Past those two things, connecting with technology and ceramics, I would say think about subject matter choices. And I do try to give a lot of choices. So if what I am sort of pitching out there isn't exciting to you, what is exciting for a typical 9th and 10th grade boy? Sports, video games, cars. And think about ways that you could sort of tweak or modify some of the subject matter choices to kind of hit on those interests. Specifically, one of the things that I think has worked really well is I do a project called Pop Culture Mashups, and they draw 2 things that you would think like don't belong together, but together. So it's a picture of LeBron James, but then it morphs into George Washington dunking a basketball. Like that's been like a big hit for like the boys who are kind of checked out.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, I'll just second that with any of the like physical work or sculptural materials where, I've always had guys who love to make their own canvas, like stretch their own canvas and paint on it. Anything with wire, any type of sculpture that really gets them in there doing hands-on stuff. And that's good. And if you're just teaching a drawing or painting class, yeah, like you said, Andrew, like going back to subject matter and finding out what they like, what they're interested in can really go a long ways when you do that.
I want to drive another point home because I do think there's something physical that like boys sometimes miss out on. Yeah. So I think about like screen printing, like standing, you're pulling, you're leaning over. There's something about even just like engaging people physically that can get them interested. So I've been messing around a lot with removing students' chairs, which was a great article on The Art of Ed recently about, getting rid of student chairs. And it's like, no, you have to paint for the next 15 minutes standing up. And there's something about that physicality that I think can kind of rekindle or ignite some students' interest.
Yeah, you can get some good things out of there. I like that idea a lot. But I want to circle it back around. Alecia, you had mentioned just a little bit ago about teaching routines, and I think this question is perfect for that. So I'm going to give this one to you. This is from Melissa, who is an elementary teacher in Colorado, and she said, I usually don't have problems with my kids coming into class too rambunctious, but this year I have 2 classes that come in the room in full crazy mode and seem to stay there for the entire 40 minutes. How can I get them to come in more quietly? I feel like that could really set the tone for the whole class time if I can just get them to calm down before we get started on making our art.
Yeah, you know what? I would say definitely calming them before entering the art room is key. I don't know, but I'm definitely a believer in the last full moon and our kiddos acting a little crazier. And I feel like they just didn't quite come down from the crazy. So I also have had some very, very rambunctious classes. And so I've kind of been going through my toolkit of like different strategies of what I can do. We tried this last time, it didn't work, or et cetera, et cetera. So I have my basic routines, and that's having the whiteboard ready with written instructions. I always remind them verbally. But the one thing I do is I actually have my students line up across from my door in the hallway before they enter the art room. And so we have to have a quiet line, paying attention, eyes on me, being prepared for art before we enter the room. And then we walk in and have our normal routine of putting our sketchbooks at our seats. And either with the older kids, I have them stay at their spots spots, or if they're younger, come down to the floor. And so I keep it the same every single time, but obviously keeping it the same is not going to prevent the rambunctious days. And so it ends up being a lot of reteaching, and sometimes we even practice again. I mean, I know that sounds kind of silly to waste so much art time practicing, but they're going to soon realize, well, shoot, we had to line back up again, walk back in the room until we can all get quiet. So I do a little bit of that, but then actually I think also one of the most recent articles on Art of Ed 2 was a couple different ways to have your classes come in. I think it was actually today's from Matt. And it was, having different ideas about having the lights off, or having quiet videos going, or quiet music, or have a question ready, or have a bell ringer ready to go. And so actually I do have one really crazy first grade class, and I have started having just the lights off. And then it's a video that's kind of gone around, but it's like soap and I think oil and milk or something. And it's just like these bubbles flowing on the screen. And so it kind of draws their attention back down to the floor. And at first they get a little excited about it, but then they kind of just calm back down. So I think just really sticking to your routine that you've established. And if you need to switch it up, and then practice. And then just keep it consistent and keep your expectations consistent, because when you fail to, kind of follow those is when the cracks start to break apart even more.
I think that's good advice. And I want to ask you a question too, because I feel like this is where a lot of teachers sort of don't follow through. Like, if you need to reteach a routine like 5 or 6 times and waste an entire class period, is it worth it for you to do that?
Yes. I mean, my flat out answer, yes. I mean, and that's the issue though too is, well, how many class periods then are, you can take that further and further. But I am a firm believer in, teaching the routine, getting it right, and keeping my expectations consistent, and then, actually following through.
Yes.
And just having those consistent high expectations, eventually the kiddos are going to realize they're missing so much art time, or the other classes are ahead, or, and just also making sure that you're, providing something they want to be a part of too. That's one of the big things, like Michael Linson drives home, classroom management guru, is that, you had to keep it interesting as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's, good advice, because I feel like so many teachers will say, oh, I retaught it a couple times and it's not perfect, but I think they get the idea. Like, no, you need to keep going through it until they get it right. And if it does take an entire period, like the only time you see them that week, that's unfortunate, but it's going to make your next 15 times that you see them so much better. And so it's worth it.
Yeah, it's never too late is what I say. Like, go for it.
Yes.
Teach and reteach. And if you want to teach a new routine, teach it too in the middle of the year. Doesn't matter. In fact, like most routines need to be retaught anyway, obviously multiple times, but back from winter breaks and spring breaks, etc. So
Yep. I think that's some really good advice. All right. Now, Andrew, this one's coming your way. Again, we're trying to get kids involved and get them interested. This comes from Denise, who's a middle school teacher in Florida. How do you make perspective drawing interesting? I enjoy teaching it, but it bores my kids to death. I've done city scenes and castles and a dream house, which I feel like every art teacher does, but there really isn't a good way to get kids interested and excited. What do you do with perspective drawing?
You set me up on this one. Denise, don't hate me when you hear this, but I'm going to give you some tough love advice, and then I'll try to sugarcoat it after a while.
Okay.
If you are doing a project that does not and cannot and will not connect with kids, maybe we need to question whether we need to keep teaching it. That's
Yes.
my tough love.
Yes.
Okay. I actually have not taught perspective drawing in many, 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 many years. And I think part of the reason why I don't teach it anymore is because I don't draw that way. I've learned how to draw from observation, and I feel like I don't benefit from it. My kids weren't into it, so I abandoned it 6-7 years ago. Now, okay, here's where I'm going to sugarcoat it. If you actually want to keep doing it because you see value in it and you enjoy it and you think your students will get some value out of it, and you just need to sweet talk them and coerce them into it, I think there are some things you could do. Number one, I would say your 1-point and your 2-point perspective, make that be like a little 1-day mini lesson exercise. Don't turn it into a whole big blown out project. Number two, I would venture into 3-point or 4-point perspective and really challenge them and look at the art of like comic book illustration. And then you can do whatever you want with it. It could be a colored block. It could be a Lego. It could be, whatever. And then I think even to build on that is look at some of the video games that kids are playing and connected with these days that are like, a ball is running over a maze and that maze is in perspective. Or there's a game that I played called Stacked where you just have to stack these stupid blocks on top of each other and it gets faster and more challenging. That is in perspective. So to maybe outsource a little bit of, okay, students, where do we see perspective? And then let that sort of build how you're turning it into a bigger, longer project. I think you'll connect a little bit more with them. So yeah, whether it's video games or whatever they're kind of can bring up or, comic books, I think there are some ways to make it be a little bit more exciting, but also just question if you still need to be doing it.
Yeah, I was actually excited to drop the bomb that I quit teaching perspective drawing too, but you beat me to the punch. But that's all right. But I will say one point that the always awesome Ian Sands brought up once upon a time. I remember him talking about perspective drawing, and he said he did it in high school and hated it in high school and then never used it again until he had to teach it. And,
right.
You spoke to that same point, and you're like, I don't think it's all that relevant. I think, we teach it because we learned it, but, it's really tough to give a good example of where artists use that on a consistent basis. So
well, I want to throw another sort of bone to Denise if she really does like this. I've seen some artists out there who will do large scale, giant perspective drawings on the wall with tape, so you're getting this of like, how do I draw these objects, these castles, these, buildings, but doing it as sort of like a temporary mural with painter's tape on the wall. That might be another sort of fun way, again, to like get your kids up and moving and physical and still give them sort of that same idea that they're learning and mastering perspective drawing.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think you can also do things like, forced perspective photography, or you can do foreshortening drawing or painting projects and just show some of the alternatives. But Alecia, did you have something for this too?
Yeah, I think too, as I kind of reevaluate what I think my purpose is as an elementary art educator too, I pull way, way back and think about the bigger picture. Like, what is the point of teaching perspective? Is it to teach about space and foreground and background? Because if that's the case, then there's so many other ways that can be taught, like you guys just discussed, like those awesome murals or the forced perspective. So if the purpose of kind of that Ian's quote that you brought up kind of just got me thinking, like, why do we teach perspective if in turn I'm just going to reteach it again? Or if they eventually become it. So maybe thinking about the bigger purpose of why perspective is taught, and if that's, like I said, to include space, then teach something about space or foreground, background, etc.
Yeah, and like you said, there are a million ways to do that go beyond just, our regular 1-point and 2-point perspective. So hopefully we can move on and try and incorporate some of those new ideas. But guys, we are up against it. It is time for us to get out of here. So Andrew and Alecia, thank you both very much. And I feel like we should get together and do this again sometime.
Absolutely, I would love to.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
All right, cool. Thank you, guys. We will talk to you later. All right, that was an awesome conversation, and a big thank you to both Andrew and Alecia for coming on and talking all sorts of different ideas for your classrooms and different ways that you can help your projects, help your classroom management, and all that day-to-day stuff that makes your life a little bit easier. Now, 2 things for you. If you were interested in this conversation, number 1, we would love to hear from you. We had a lot of fun recording the episode, and we would really enjoy doing another one if the audience is there. So like I said at the beginning, we spend a lot of time with this podcast talking about the really big ideas. Like Andrew just last week was talking about how he needs to save in education. And that was an awesome episode. But at the same time, we need to, address the things that are going on a daily basis. So if you would love another episode of this, of the Project Doctors, shoot us an email at radioguys@theartofed.com and let us know, and we'll see if we can put another one together. Secondly, if you you enjoy all of these strategies, all of these ideas, I'm going to recommend the Art of Ed's Instructional Strategies for Art Teachers course. You can go to theartofed.com/courses and check it out. It lasts 5 weeks. It is a 3 credit hour course, and it is perfect for all kinds of ideas on improving your instruction, improving your lessons, how you present things, how you demonstrate things, and how you go through your classes on a day-to-day basis. There's so much with new media, the ways you present it, and all of the different ideas that you can bring back to your classroom. It is absolutely one of my favorite courses to teach, and I know everyone who takes it gets so much out of it. So again, if you like these ideas and are looking for new ideas and new ways to demonstrate things, present things, introduce things in your classroom, Instructional Strategies for Art Teachers is the one for you. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, but we would love to hear from you, and we would love to know what you thought about the Project Doctors. So shoot us an email, and maybe we can more often on this podcast address those issues that are so relevant, are so important to the way your classroom runs on a day-to-day basis. Art Ed Radio is developed, produced, and supported by the Art of Education with audio engineering by Michael Crocker. Like I said, we would love to hear your feedback, so email us at radioguys@theartofed.com and let us know what you thought. And while you're doing that, tell us that you want to be part of our email list. We'll put you right on there. Those come out every Tuesday, and they're hilarious, along with the new episodes of Art Ed Radio. And if you need to see more, check out artedradio.com or go to theartofed.com and click on the podcast tab. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next Tuesday.